and welcome. This is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. Today, we're talking about the latest meeting of the Trilateral Contact Group, which took place in Minsk on October 2nd. On the agenda were mine explosions, illegal elections, but what we want to talk about today are possible ongoing leadership changes and maybe some other changes to come. To go more into depth, we're joined in our studio today by Olena Snigyr. She is a leading specialist at the Center of International Studies at the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine. Olena, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, thank you.
So let's talk about one of the major changes that's come about is Leonid Kuchma, second president of Ukraine, has been Ukraine's representative at the Trilateral Group for the past 4 years. And now he is retiring from this group because of health problems. This is a major change because this has been the only representative Ukraine has, and so we've seen a constant thread and a constant leadership throughout. What kind of changes are we expecting to see?
Well, first of all, it is understandable step of Kuchma because he is quite old, 80 years old, and he's tired, and it is normal that he decided to leave. It doesn't mean that this process is dead or is under threat, that as such some commentators already commented. But it just means that Kuchma wants to leave, wants to retire and to have more comfort and calm life.
Well, it's understandable for the last time. And also perhaps this change could lead to things that could be a change in direction, maybe some new blood, as so to say.
Well, it depends on who will possess the place of Kuchma, who will be the new Ukrainian leader representative in this group. And but what is the most important thing which I would like to mention, and what Kuchma has said also, is that we do not expect any obvious or any substantial changes or any substantial progress in these negotiations till the end of election process in Ukraine, till the end of presidential elections, and which is more important, to the end of parliamentary elections. So this is the period, election period in Ukraine is very vulnerable, and a Minsk process which has been not frozen, but
it
quite
really hasn't progressed.
Yes,
so the same topics are introduced and not resolved.
We didn't face much progress in it before, and now it would be even more frozen because Russia will put all its forces into to influence election process in Ukraine, to influence internal political life in Ukraine in order to get some substantial benefits for itself, in order to have at the end to have favorable pro-Russian forces in power in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
So it's very vulnerable and very unsecure period for Ukraine. And we have also to focus, it is very important to focus on our internal security and our internal stability. Meanwhile, in Minsk Group, of course, there should be put a new figure.
Right.
And this new figure should be quite strong, probably as much strong as Kuchma was.
So they're looking, I know that some of the candidates are one of the ambassadors for the Trilateral Group has been put up perhaps as a candidate for his replacement. Yeah,
there has been named some candidates already. What I think that, we have to look for such a powerful figure that can be compared to Kuchma.
That will have that same weight.
Yes. Probably it can be Yevhen Marchuk, who is now the leader of security subgroup in this Minsk negotiation process.
Right?
Yes, but he can either join two positions, or he can lead the whole process from Ukrainian side, and there can be. It is easier to find some other candidate, some alternative to him to keep this security subgroup, because other candidates, they're not so. They do not have the same experience, and they don't have the same weight as you mentioned, and it is quite important in this process.
Absolutely. And will Kuchma be allowed to choose his successor, or is he just going to be given a strong voice in helping decide?
I think that Kuchma can give some pieces of advice, but I do not think that he will choose his successor, because Minsk process is very important for our foreign policy and for the president himself. So I think that the main choice will be made by the president of Ukraine.
And another very pressing issue, or perhaps a change that we could hope to see, is the relocation of the Minsk negotiations from Belarus to another country. Because as we see, especially with Russia trying to extend its influence in Belarus, pushing to build a military base there, and regardless, Belarus has never been somewhat of a neutral location. So what has been the talk about this?
Definitely, to move the place from Minsk, to move negotiations from Minsk to another neutral city is a very good idea, and it's high time for this for a long period already, because Belarus is a military and security and political ally of Russia. Belarus is a member of CSTO. And Belarus, we do not know the level of Russian intrusion or intervention into security service of Belarus, and we cannot trust actually Belarus. Belarus is not neutral at all, because we already had this case with the Pavlo Grip. He's a Ukrainian citizen, and he was actually kidnapped at the territory of Belarus by Russian special security forces, and now he is in prison in Russia.
Right.
So it's
and Ukrainian border guards have been detained. So what has taken so long for this to become something that's really being considered? It seems that this would have been a earlier press to have these negotiations moved from this country.
Why it is taking so long? Because Belarus Belarus used to be considered as a good place for such negotiations. For example, negotiations on Nagorno-Karabakh issue are taking place in Minsk for already 25 years, and every year they have this negotiating process, eternal negotiating process.
Made, I mean, and that's not the fault of the location or Belarus with the lack of progress in that situation. That's certainly...
Yes, yes, it is not the fault of Minsk.
But it comes to the issue of security. And
for Ukraine it's the issue of security, because Belarus is the neighbor of Ukraine. Right. And recent Russian military activity in Belarus is a matter of our concern. And we cannot just be so blind and do not keep attention to this. And yes, why we kept this negotiation process in Minsk, the other reason is also that Minsk is very close. And some members of Ukrainian Trilateral Group are getting to Minsk by their own cost. And they're paying their own money for the tickets, and it's close and cheap. and it's uncomparable, for example, to Geneva or to Berlin.
Right.
So it would be
very difficult. And this is something I certainly didn't know, that many of the members there are not being sponsored, so to speak, financially,
for example,
by their governments.
Olga Ivazovska, she is paying by herself. And it's quite, it would be quite expensive for her to go every 2 weeks to Geneva.
So do they have some countries on a list, or some other locations that have been kind of tossed around as a...
I hadn't heard any ideas except from Astana, Kazakhstan, but Kazakhstan is not also acceptable
secure,
because Kazakhstan is also a Russian military ally in the frames of CSTO. Probably it could be Chisinau.
I was going to say maybe
Moldova.
Romania or Moldova,
or Romania, yeah.
Moldova,
some close, or maybe some neutral, no, not neutral, but some country, some place in Poland. But I think that Chisinau could be the next, not the best place for these negotiations.
And what other issues have come up in this latest meeting that haven't perhaps been broached before, or have seen at least some progress or a different perspective that's been taken?
There had been issues. There had been raised issues about mining process or demining process. Yeah, but there is not a lot of information, official information, about the list of questions which have been raised during these negotiations. Also because recently Russian side and so-called separatist side, they claimed that some members of Ukrainian group quite openly tell to the public the context of the negotiations, and they do not like it. So today, Ukrainian side is quite careful.
More closed about
yes, it's quite careful because it is very sensitive. Negotiations are very sensitive process itself.
And in a sense, that does make sense. And because, as you said, they are a sensitive situation.
Yes.
And it comes to that same thing of being able to negotiate while knowing that your discussions are somewhat secure before decisions are made.
Yes.
So that you're able to discuss in a more honest or open atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then the decisions that come from it are the ones that are
yeah, it's definitely. And if for those who want really to follow the topic which are topics which are negotiated during this Minsk process, they can follow profiles in Facebook, for example, of members of Ukrainian groups. Sometimes these members, they write openly about information which they think they can share. So it is always better to read the first source of information from those people who really who are in the process.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Olena. And
thank you very much.
We look forward to having you on once we know who Kuchma's successor is, and any other changes that occur, we'll have you back to discuss these.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
And that was Olena Snigyr. She's a leading specialist of the Center of International Studies at the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining, and stay tuned.